All right, hey friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. That is something that I can say now, and that is really, really cool. We're gonna do a January wrap up. This is the first wrap up of the year. I read 7 books in the month of January, and I have a lot that I want to say about them, so I'm gonna get right into it. Okay, I started off this month with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. A friend of mine has a book club on Fable, and this is a book that they chose to read for January. I started this book back in 2024, but it kind of caught me off guard. I think it caught me at the wrong time, and I ended up DNFing, a soft DNF, obviously. So when my friend said that she was reading this for January, I thought this was the perfect time for me to try again. And I am so glad that I did. I don't feel like there's anything that I can say about this book that has not already been said. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is a reviewed, well known book within the book space. I think it was very popular last year. It's getting gray out there, guys. If you don't know the synopsis of the story somehow, it is about a woman named Addie LaRue from the 1700s who ends up making a deal with the wrong god who damns her with a life of invisibility. So when she is in the presence of someone, she can talk with them, they can see her, but the moment that they walk away, they immediately forget who she is. Addie could stop this at any time, but in doing so, she would have to give her life to this god. And this girl is stubborn, and she is not going to do that. So she has lived hundreds of years with this curse, and it has been very, very lonely for her until she one day does meet someone that can remember her. Once I was able to accept that this story wasn't going to be about what I thought it was going to be about, I greatly enjoyed what it was about. Does that make sense? I think that makes a little bit of sense. Walking through this character's life was highly relatable, which is very weird seeing as I've never been invisible. What it meant for Addie to be a woman in the world and the sacrifices and the consequences that came with her just wanting more, even if you yourself as a woman have never had the same constraints, you still understand on some level what it means. I also really enjoyed the writing of this book. This was my first experience with V.E. Schwab's writing, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really loved the pacing of the story, which is ironic seeing as the pacing is what put me off the first time I approached this book. But going into it now with more understanding, kind of knowing what I was walking into, it really adds to the tone of the story. V. Schwab did an amazing, amazing job with this book. I will say, after reading this one, I am more interested to read other books that V. Schwab has written. Listen, I had a completely different plan for what I wanted to read for the month of January, and then this came in the mail and completely derailed everything for me. This is Ambessa, Chosen of the Wolf. It's written by Seal Clark. It's an arc that I got from Orbit Publishing. If you know the lore behind League of Legends, kudos to you. I did not before reading this book. I was introduced to Ambessa through the Netflix series Arcane. And let me tell you, that show barely scratches the surface. I feel like I have to get up close and personal with the mic to talk about this book. I've already done a full review. I have a full video that I've dedicated to this book. I just need to edit it and post it. So I'm not going to go too much into detail now. What I will say is that this character has haunted my dreams since reading this book, and even more so since learning the lore behind League of Legends. The characters that have been introduced in this book, why Ambessa is the way that she is. Ambessa is a Amazonian savage queen who I love and simultaneously hate. She deserves all of the obsession that she gets through her fan base. I'm also really grateful that they got Seal Clark to write this book. Seal Clark is another author whose books I have not yet read, but if her other books are anything like this one, then those are the kinds of stories that I look for. Like I said, I did already do a full review on this book. I just have to edit it and post it. So I'm not going to say any more on it now. But in case you don't catch that review, this book comes out February 18th, and I really hope it gets the love that it deserves. Next, I read House of Beating Wings. It's by Olivia Wildenstein. This was actually the book that my book club chose for January. It's a romantasy. Listen, when it comes to romantasies, I approach them with a lot of grace because more times than not, romantasy books just have a lot of problems. Like the characters can be more superficial, or the cute love interest doesn't really have anything of substance to them. They're just very attractive or maybe toxic. And let's face it, the only time that we want that is in a fantasy. House of Beating Wings is essentially that. It follows our main character, Fallon, who is a half fae in a world where being a half fae means you're a lesser being. She's crazy about a boy who just so happens to be the full fae prince. He's a bit sweet on her too, but the other faes around them, kind of frown on the idea of these two being together. The prince doesn't seem to care, but Fallon knows that she can never actually stand at his side because she's not like him. So one day Fallon is met by this dark presence, and this woman promises to her that if she sets off and finds these hidden or lost iron crows, that she'll one day become the queen of her land. Fallon wants nothing more, so of course she sets off on this mission to find these iron crows. I should also mention that the name of the series is The Kingdom of Crows, so hence the crows. For the first 250 pages of this book, I was not interested. I simply did not care. The FMC, in my opinion, was just very juvenile, which probably wouldn't have mattered if she wasn't a 22-year-old woman. I feel like when the author makes a character 17, I kind of expect them to be like a young adult, but they're probably going to still make some mistakes. However, when the author is more intentional about making the character older, I assume it's because they're going to think more critically, and that will only make sense to me as a reader if the character is an adult. This character doesn't think critically about nothing. I also couldn't really get invested in her relationships with the other characters. Her best friend is this aloof, sort of just kind, average girl with an older sister who's more like grumpy, and they were fine, just not very interesting. Fallon has this queer best friend who's focused on his sexual liberation and he's witty, which I really like that. But again, there's not much more that I can say. Also, this story has three love interests, which I found a bit annoying because I couldn't understand what about the seemingly average girl were we also in love with. The author doesn't give Fallon any qualities that will help you to understand that. She isn't portrayed as very pretty or very fierce or very smart, like cunning. She has no magic. She's average, not because the author says she's average, but because the author doesn't say she's anything. Not only that, the love interests don't even share what it is about Fallon that they love. When it comes to the prince, it seems like there's some history, like he's known her his whole life, and that's why he loves her, maybe. But he doesn't explicitly say that. And then when it comes to one of the other ones, it seems like he's impressed that she was like a snake charmer when she was younger, but she had only done it the one time, and she even denies having done it. And it's, again, never explicitly mentioned. And when it comes to the third love interest, his reason seems like the most unfortunate of all of them, which I can't tell you because then it would spoil the book. After 250 pages, the story picked up significantly, which is what led me to read the next book. The writing did take some getting used to for me. I do like flowery writing, I do like purple prose, but only when it's done correctly. And this author liked to use a lot of words to say very little, in my opinion. In the beginning, it really slowed me down. I would see all these words and think I was missing important information. And when I would just read it again, the author would just be telling me that the house was blue. In the end, it wasn't horrible. And like I said, I did end up reading the next book, which is this one, House of Pounding Hearts. And this will be the shortest review of the bunch because I DNF'd it. I got through 50% and I could not take any more. The FMC was whiny, she was bratty. For the first 25% of this book, at least, all she did was complain. And I don't understand when women write other women this way because I don't know any women that are like this. Also, one of my biggest pet peeves is when a character has a singular motive, a singular focus, despite everyone around them telling them that it's a bad idea. And when they finally get what it is that they want, they immediately regret it. Immediately. No. I did go back to look at other people's reviews, and it seems like a lot of people really love this series, so it probably does get better. I just no longer care to find out. These two I'm going to review as one book because they are so tiny. Each book is less than 200 pages. This is actually a trilogy. I did not find the third book when I was at Barnes& and Noble book hunting. I just saw these two. I thought it was just these two, but mostly because of the author, Beth Revis. That is the author of another series that I loved when I was younger, Across the Universe. If you have never heard of that series, you should probably pick it up. It's really great. Beth Revis has such a way of writing sci-fi. It just feels for everyone. She uses scientific jargon, but she doesn't overload it in a way where it feels very cerebral and overly complicated. I even felt that way with the Across the Universe series, but it feels like with this one that her lighthearted approach to the genre like doubled down. If you are not a fan of the sci-fi genre and you've been wanting to get into it, I feel like Beth Revis is your author. Her stories are just very approachable, but they're still very gripping and exciting, and they're not lazy. Like, she puts in the work. Her plots are very well thought out. Going from the House of Eating Wings series into this series, I think made me like Fallon even less because Ada Lamar is my kind of character. Ada Lamar is kind of a con artist, so when her ship is damaged, just floating around in open space, she sends out a distress call to a nearby ship. They pick her up. She convinces the space crew to let her help them on their mission when all along she had her own agenda. The funniest thing is that she catches feelings for the government official on the ship, knowing that she's conning them, and she pursues him. My girl is not coy. Her sense of humor had me cackling, laughing out loud. This character cannot be brought down. She has zero shame. And our government official, Ryan, or Rian, however you want to say his name, plays so well into our main character's hands. He's just a smitten little kitten when it comes to Ada Lamar. He knows she's playing a game and he's keeping one eye open, but he's entertained. The mystery in the book is what is so entertaining because all the pieces are there, they're right in front of you, but you don't get to see how they all connect until the end of the book when Ada puts them all together. Ada Lamar knows what's going on the whole time, and she's not telling you as the reader anything. So trust me, the entire time you are just holding your breath trying to figure out what is she going to do. I treated these books kind of like a palate cleanser. I mean, again, they're very quick to read. They're each, like I said, less than 200 pages. You can read both of them back to back in one day. The series just does really well at being an easy to read sci-fi. Even though these books are small, a lot of world building has gone into them, a lot of plot has gone into them. And side note, I just love these covers so much too. Like I can't wait to get the third one just to like have the covers on my shelf. I think they just look so cool. I'm kind of losing the sun at this point. So for the last book that I read in the month of January, it was also a short story written by Daniele Vaccaro. It's called One Way Ticket to Earth. This is an indie book. The author reached out to me on TikTok and asked me if I wanted to read his book. Of course, I said yes. The story at its core is a story about love that transcends space and time. It's kind of a concept we're all very familiar with in the world of storytelling. And I feel a bit bad because it's possible that the story met me at the wrong time. I did not have as large of a response to this book as I saw other reviewers did. I can definitely say just by reading this unbiased that this is a very beautiful story. It's about a boy who passes away and he is reincarnated on another planet. This planet has no war, no violence. It's kind of like a paradise, but he can still remember his past life and the people that he left behind, like his parents. Although it didn't have the impact that I thought it was going to have on me, there was so much to unpack with this book. The main character, Max, essentially wakes up in a perfect world, but it wasn't home because the people that mattered most to him weren't in it. The lengths that he goes through to get back to them, it felt very heartwarming and touching to me. It was written really beautifully. I think it's just the state in which I was receiving the book. I do have a lot going on right now. My only critique with the book would be the way that it ended. At the end of the book, it kind of touches on these soul ties that we have with various people in our lives, like friends and our families. If the main character had had more conflict at an earlier stage of the story, I think it would have really cemented that message later at the end of the story. When I finished it, I felt like the author wanted to spotlight those deep connections, but when I reflected back, the main character didn't really seem that connected. I mean, he did seem sad, but he still had like a very singular focus of getting back to his parents. In the end, kind of made me feel sad for that character that seemed to sacrifice quite a lot, but didn't seem to get the same devotion. Then again, this story is only about 25, 26 pages, so that could just be asking a lot of the story. I still think this author did a really good job. That was just one detail that I feel could have tied the whole thing together for me. Anyway, so that's it. That's my January TBR. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there's any books that you guys have read or any books that you plan to read. It is now February and it's also Black History Month. So I cannot wait to get into all of my Black fantasies. I feel like it's going to be a great month.